Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Josh Brugger, last name Bruegger. I'm the police chief here at the city of Pasadena. Here to talk about a capital murder case we had over the weekend. This past Saturday at about 3:07 p.m., our officers were dispatched to an apartment complex at 1004 Main, apartment number 24. Our dispatcher originally received a call of a 11-year-old not breathing. Our officers as well as paramedics responded to the scene. The 11-year-old victim was pronounced deceased at the scene by paramedics. We immediately began an investigation involving our detectives. The case has since been ruled a homicide. The 11-year-old was her death as a result of strangulation, and the investigation also revealed that she was sexually assaulted. The victim and her father are both from Guatemala, and they're the only two people that live there at the apartment. On Saturday, her father left for work at about 9:45 a.m., and shortly after leaving, shortly after 10 a.m., he received communication from his daughter that there was an unknown person or an unidentified person knocking at the front door. That was the last communication he had with his daughter. A little later, he asked some family members that also live in the complex to go check on his daughter because he hadn't heard from her. An aunt and an uncle went into the apartment. They did a cursory check and were unable to locate her. And about just after 3 o'clock, when her father got home from work, he found her body concealed underneath the bed in the bedroom. At this point, the father's alibi checks out, so he is, at this point, at least not a suspect in this investigation. The victim and her father have lived in that apartment for about 3 months. And with any type of investigation like this, there's quite a bit of digital evidence that we're going through as well as physical evidence, and that we have to process. At this point, we do not have a suspect, but obviously this case is very important to us. Anytime you have a death of a, especially a child, one that's been sexually assaulted, very brutal, and obviously it's also taken a toll on our officers that were out there and made the scene. I'll take any questions that we have right now.
Do you have a criminal profile, someone that you might be looking for, any sort of information? I know that you said you don't have a suspect, but when you look at the type of crime,
Right.
It could possibly be a certain type of
Right.
crime.
We're not there yet. We don't have any other crimes like this, but obviously it's a concern because clearly a very, very violent crime. Fortunately, this isn't something that's common.
It was only the dad and the daughter living, no one else?
That's correct. As I understand it, the mother is still in Guatemala.
Were they seeking asylum, or do you know how they came?
I do not know their legal status right now. As far as our investigation, that's the least of our concerns at this point.
You guys took a few days to announce this to the public. Can you kind of say what happened between Saturday and this?
The autopsy wasn't done until yesterday, and so really trying to get the pieces together. When I come stand before you, I want to have as many facts as I can, and so again, the autopsy not being done until yesterday is the reason we're putting it out today.
Is this an apartment complex or not?
It is an apartment complex, relatively small. There's a large Guatemalan population there in that apartment complex. And like I said, the family members that the father had called to come check on her, they live in the complex as well. And so it's a, I say a fairly close, community there. Somebody had to have seen something, and that's the big thing that we're asking for is, whoever saw something, around 10 a.m. or just after 10 a.m. on Saturday at that particular apartment, we're asking them to come forward with any information that they might have.
Is it safe to say that maybe that person knew that little girl was there home alone?
It seems awfully, suspicious that, dad leaves for work and, within 30 minutes you've got somebody knocking at the door, certainly.
Okay, so at around 10 o'clock, is that what you said when she sends the text message to the father to say there's somebody knocking at the door?
Correct.
And does the dad say anything like, hey, don't answer the door? Or
There was some communication. I don't want to divulge what the communication was back and forth yet at this point. I will say, he asked if somebody entered. She didn't respond, and that's the last communication there is.
From your investigation, was there a forced entry?
There was not forced entry. The door was unlocked and it was closed when the first family members went to go check on.
And you said that it's a very small complex, the way
Yep.
you described it.
Correct.
I mean, what are the odds that it could be somebody living in the complex still, or someone who's familiar with the complex?
I mean, I think naturally that's the first place you're going to look, right? Is somewhere around there, and that's, you know, obviously we're going to start our efforts there, and you know, move out from there. But that's, you know, certainly we have talked to several people there in the complex at this point.
Is there any reason people should be worried? You know, this is an 11-year-old girl and school is starting back up
Right.
tomorrow.
I mean, anytime, you know, you have a crime like this, certainly, you know, we don't have a suspect at this point, and so, you know, we're doing our level best to get out there, you know, and solve this crime. But certainly, you know, as a, you know, parent of a, you know, almost 10-year-old myself, you know, certainly is a cause for concern.
What kind of resources do you have on this and what you might need from the public? Or
The big thing we need from the public is anybody that they may have seen around that apartment around that time. We've reached out to some of our federal partners, again, because, you know, you have a large Guatemalan population, and so trying to, you know, do research on, you know, different people living there in the complex. And so we have our federal partners that are working with us as well as our investigators, our crime scene unit, the medical examiner's office. You know, everybody is working together on this to, you know, try to bring it to a resolution as quick as we can.
Were there any security cameras in the complex or nearby?
So there are security cameras in the complex. We don't know if they're operational. We've got the equipment at this point, but I think there was concern with the last storm that they potentially didn't actually record, which is part of the digital evidence that we have that we're trying to process.
has there been any other history of calls or that complex?
Nothing out of the ordinary. I mean, like I said, it's a relatively small complex, and honestly, it's a pretty quiet complex.
You know, with all the incredible advancements in forensic science over the past few years, a case like this, would you think would be fairly solvable? Would you be able to identify somebody in a pretty short period of time? I don't know what the timeline is on getting all these results.
Right.
And all that.
And that's always the biggest challenge is, you know, turning things around. We're not the, you know, it's not the only homicide in the county. You know, it's not the only, certainly it's a high-profile case. I mean, when you have an 11-year-old, but that's not to say one homicide's more important than another one, right? And so trying, you know, working through, you know, with the Institute of Forensic Sciences on the processing of DNA. DNA is timely, or time-consuming as far as getting, you know, results back. And so we're working on trying to identify which pieces of evidence are most important at this point to try to get that processed as soon as we can.
Is she in school?
Well, they moved here about 3 months ago, and so as I understand it, had not been enrolled in school yet. And I don't believe, again, the information I have right now, that she was in school here at the end. I believe they were in Austin for several months before they moved here, and then before that they were in Florida for a couple years.
Were you able to determine yet if she was hidden under the bed, placed there, or if she moved herself there?
Based on the evidence, she was placed under the bed.
Any idea how she was strangled?
We do not know that right now, no.
And was she texting or calling you?
They were using, I believe, WhatsApp, and as I understand, there's text messages as well as voice messages back and forth.
Are you holding anyone at the complex with, you know, these are immigrants who came here, you know, I would assume it's a concern that somebody might flee the country.
Right, so we've gotten information, talked to a lot of people out there. We've gotten, some people have voluntarily given us DNA samples to be able to compare as the investigation goes on, you know, and that's honestly one of the big challenges we have right now is you have a large undocumented population out there, and so getting cooperation has been, you know, frankly, somewhat of a challenge. And that's, you know, I'm here to tell you right now, you know, immigration status on a case like that, it's neither here nor there. The important thing right now is solving this case and you know, getting the community safe.
Do you know if she was strangled before she was sexually assaulted or after?
I do not know the answer to that.
We had also heard that there was head trauma as well. Can you, I hate to ask this, but can you talk about the extent of the injuries?
she was strangled, as we've mentioned. I'm also understand there's some blunt force trauma to the head as well. But as far as that, I don't want to get into the other details or the other evidence right now.
You know how old that is?
I don't, but I can get the answer for you.
Other than to there's no relatives that you know of?
There's an aunt and uncle that live in the complex as well, because that's who the father had initially reached out to his nephew, who then told his mom, and the mom, which is the deceased aunt, went over to the apartment initially. She opened the door, thought things were out of place, and so she backed out of the apartment, got her husband, the deceased uncle. He then went into the apartment, looked around, didn't find her, and then they started looking in the complex, and then Dad, I guess because of his job, he was focused on his job, and it was about 1 o'clock on his lunch break when he had reached out to them to start, hey, I haven't heard from my daughter, can you see if you can go find her? And so when he got off work at 3 o'clock, he immediately went home and set everything in motion from there. Father's 32 years old.
So at this point, you don't know whether she may have been strangled with hands or possibly literature or some device?
Um,
Do you have any idea between the two of those?
I have an idea, but I'm not in a position that I'm ready to disclose that. Anything else? Okay, I'll turn it over to Sergeant Granados for Spanish.
Muy buenas tardes, Sargento Raúl Granados, Departamento de Policía de Pasadena, de la Oficina de Relaciones con los Medios. Vamos a hablar el día de ahora acerca de un homicidio, una muerte capital que sucedió en nuestra ciudad. El día sábado 12 de agosto, nuestro centro de despacho recibió una llamada de que una niña no estaba respirando. Nuestro departamento mandó una ambulancia y también a oficiales y se dieron cuenta que la jovencita había fallecido. Este caso ha sido clasificado como un homicidio por medio de estrangulación y también nos dimos cuenta que la víctima había sido asaltada sexualmente. La víctima y su padre son de Guatemala y son las únicas dos personas que vivían en ese apartamento en este momento. El papá se fue a trabajar el día del incidente a las 9:45 de la mañana y como a las 10 de la mañana él recibió un mensaje de la jovencita diciendo que alguien estaba tocando en su puerta. Su papá se trató de comunicar con ella para ver si se había dado cuenta quién había estado tocando en la puerta y ya no hubo comunicación. Como él estaba trabajando, se esperó hasta su hora de descanso. Y en su hora de descanso se comunicó con familiares, como no se podía comunicar con ella, para que fueran a investigar si todo estaba bien en el apartamento. Los familiares no la encontraron a la jovencita, le comunicaron a su papá de que no la podían encontrar y después de haber buscado en los apartamentos, el papá salió del trabajo, inmediatamente se dirigió al apartamento y al entrar al apartamento se dio cuenta que su hija estaba sin vida abajo de la cama de la recámara de ellos. Como dijimos, ella había sido estrangulada y asaltada sexualmente y obviamente es bastante difícil para el padre, ¿verdad? Nuestro departamento de policía inició una investigación en la cual, pues honestamente están tratando de hablar con todos los residentes de ese complejo de apartamentos, que es el 1004 de la calle Main, porque es un complejo de apartamentos pequeño y es una comunidad donde mucha de la gente de ahí son de Guatemala. Entonces nuestros detectives están tratando de hablar con todos para ver si podemos encontrar, ¿verdad? Obviamente quién es el sospechoso de o el culpable de este homicidio. En este punto nosotros no tenemos ninguna razón por la cual pensar que el padre sea sospechoso. El hecho de que él haya estado trabajando durante las horas que sucedió ese incidente nos indica eso. Y también estamos haciendo una investigación de los alrededores de evidencia digital, ya sea cámaras o cualquier información de que podamos buscar para ver si podemos verificar quién entró y salió de ese apartamento. Y como podemos saber también, nuestros detectives están buscando evidencia, ¿verdad? Dentro del apartamento de quienes pudieron haber estado ahí, evidencia de ADN. Y también, ¿verdad? Al hablar con los residentes de los apartamentos, muchos de ellos ya han ofrecido su propio ADN para excluirlos a ellos como sospechosos, ¿verdad? Entonces, en este momento seguimos las indagatorias, seguimos hablando con todas las personas que viven ahí, ¿verdad? Para tratar de encontrar al sospechoso lo más pronto posible. Si alguien tiene información, tenemos a 2 detectives a los cuales pueden contactar que hablan español, ¿verdad? Ya sea porque en este complejo de apartamentos muchos de ellos no hablan inglés, ¿verdad? Es el detective Mata y Quintanilla del Departamento de Policía de Pasadena. Y ¿verdad? Es un caso bastante triste, no solo para la comunidad, ¿verdad? No solo para los padres, pero también para la comunidad y nuestros oficiales, ¿verdad? Y los socorristas, todos los que asistieron. El ver a una joven de 11 años sin vida y haber muerto de manera tan violenta es bastante difícil de aceptar, ¿verdad? Sabemos que ella tenía aproximadamente 3 meses de vivir aquí con su papá. Ellos vivieron en Austin y en Florida y llegaron aquí hace 3 meses. Aún no estaba inscrita en la escuela, no habían tenido tiempo, imagino, de llevarla a inscribirla para que empezara a atender, y las clases pues empezaron el día de ayer, ¿verdad? Así es que no tuvo la oportunidad de ir a la escuela aquí. Es bastante triste para la familia y para todos, ¿verdad? Lo que le sucedió a ella, y lo que queremos es encontrar a cualquier persona que haya sido responsable por este homicidio lo más pronto posible.
¿Encontraron restos de ADN en el cuerpo de la niña?
Sí, o sea, su cuerpo se checa completamente por ADN, y entonces se compara con la ADN que hayamos conseguido de todas las personas que nos hayan ofrecido y cualquier otro sospechoso que se haya encontrado. Entonces esa comparación es la que nos va a llevar a saber quién estuvo cerca de ella en el momento del homicidio.
Supongo que ustedes están colaborando con otros cuerpos policiales. ¿Hay algún caso de un violador de niñas que esté atacando a distintas menores y que no haya sido capturado?
Sí, efectivamente, estamos hablando con, obviamente, todos los departamentos de policía de nuestro alrededor. No tenemos ningún caso que tenga el mismo, o que sea similar a ¿verdad? Aún, entonces, es importante, pues, abrir las puertas, ¿verdad? Seguir comunicándonos, ya sea por estos medios también, de decirle a cualquier persona si saben de algún caso similar que se contacten con nosotros para ver si podemos encontrar un perfil de alguien que sea sospechoso en un caso similar.
Última pregunta. Esto ha sido una comunidad de apartamentos donde, según han dicho, hay muchas personas de Guatemala.
Sí.
Y se conocían entre ellos, ¿no? Había un trato que se conocían. ¿Creen que alguien pudo haber visto algo y que a lo mejor no ha dicho nada por miedo?
Eso existe también, ¿verdad? Los queremos avisar a todos los ciudadanos, ¿verdad? A cualquier persona que haya visto algo, que no se preocupen por su estatus migratorio, que no se preocupen por represalias en contra de ellos. Lo importante ahorita es encontrar a la persona responsable que le quitó la vida a esta joven. Ninguno de ellos va a enfrentar ningún cargo, ninguno de ellos tiene que temer de que sea deportado. Si tienen información, comuníquense con nosotros, y si necesitan a alguien que hable español, se pueden comunicar directamente conmigo, ya sea por redes sociales también.